Work was tough. On Friday, a factory machine broke down. I spent most of the day with the engineering team fixing hardware and software issues, which drained us all. I've run a printing company in northern Sydney for the past 12 years. That evening, I parked in the garage, exhausted and just wanting the day to end. Owning a print shop is always tiring. At home, I was frustrated that my wife, Louise, of 15 years, hadn't been affectionate lately. I'm very touchy-feely and little gestures energize me. Recently, Louise has been distant and moody. She loves quality time and my attention, which I try to give, but it's hard when she pushes me away. And I have a company to run. I'm Cameron Other, 42, and Louise and I have 2 daughters. Our oldest, Carrie, is 18 and a younger version of her mother, smart, determined, and studying engineering in her 3rd year at university. She wants to help design new printing presses after graduation. Our second daughter, Sarah, is our free spirit, smart but unmotivated, a social butterfly glued to her phone. Both girls were away for the weekend, leaving Louise and me alone. I reflected on the week, hoping to resolve our issues with some drinks and conversation. I got out of my truck, grabbed my bag, and headed to the kitchen. Louise wasn't around, so I poured myself a Kraken and cola, turned on some mellow tunes, and tried to unwind. The broken machine seemed fixed, but the lost revenue would cost us at least $10,000, more if not properly repaired next week. This was a significant loss for my Sydney market staff. Hearing movement, I saw Louise enter the room. "You look good, my love," I said, and she smiled at me. I sighed, taking a sip. "Sorry, Lou, it's been a rough day. I don't have the energy to go out tonight." She smiled again, but without love in her eyes. My day went from bad to worse. "Okay, Cam," she said, her voice shaky. "I didn't plan on you coming with me." I was confused. We rarely went out separately, and she never dressed like this for a girls' night. "You weren't?" I asked, taking a big sip. "Why are you dressed like it's a special date?" Louise looked unsure. "Cameron," she stopped. "Are you breaking up with me?" I asked. Louise looked shocked. "No, of course not, Cam." She reached out, but I pulled away, laughing bitterly. "Now you're going to tell me you need to do this on your own, that you deserve it after raising our kids and being dedicated to our family?" I glanced at her big bag on the table. "Judging by your bag, you weren't planning on coming home tonight. It's nice to see you leaving our marriage so easily." "Cam," she stopped, looking at me. I stayed silent. She sighed. "We both work so hard, and I know you do it for us, but I'm only going to see Roger for a while." "Roger? Roger Fellworth, the general counsel at your job? Roger Fellworth, who's married with 3 kids under 10? That Roger Fellworth?" I asked. "For a while," my wife answered, panic in her eyes. She was surprised I knew who her lover was. She sighed. "Yes, Cam, that Roger. He's been good to me since you haven't been around." "Crap," I exploded. "What?" Louise was shocked. "You heard me," I said. "Crap! You're justifying an affair. We both work hard, but saying I wasn't here is a lie, and you know it. You've been distancing yourself. I've tried to spend time with you, but you kept pushing me away. Now I know why. You can't fool me." I stood abruptly, my chair scraping the floor. "Cameron, I'm not attacking you," she stuttered. "Tonight, this weekend, was supposed to be our first time," she said, embarrassed. "Right. So you'll cheat on me for a whole weekend, not just one night." I glared at her and went to the kitchen for another drink, despite being exhausted from work. I poured a double Kraken when Louise appeared in the doorway, angry but unashamed. "Cameron, I'm not a strumpet. Unlike you and your first love, Rose, I've never been with another man. Roger says I'm not cheating because I'm telling you. It's only cheating if I hide it." "Dragging Rose into this is a low blow," I almost growled. She looked away. "And you're wrong. It's cheating if I don't accept it, and I don't. Is your new man telling his wife the same?" I don't know," she stammered, looking at her shoes. I snorted, chugged my drink, and turned to her. Her face was a mix of emotions. "He's probably lying about being unavailable. Has he kissed you?" "What?" she asked. "Has Roger kissed you?" I emphasized. She blushed. "Yes." "Well, that says it all. You've rejected me while getting closer to another man. We're done." I walked out to the back terrace and slammed the door. I sat on the back veranda, reflecting on the day. I wanted to be with my wife, but she was betraying me. After about 5 minutes, Louise appeared, trying a softer approach. "Cam, I love you, but I need this. I felt stuck for the last year. Roger understands. It won't be long." I stared into the yard. "No, Louise. You should have turned to me. I was your best friend, your partner. But you gave yourself to another man and robbed me of the chance to be there for you. Now I don't know if I can be near you again." She didn't move. "Cameron," she said softly but firmly. You can't leave. Roger says if you do, I'll take everything. I'll get half your business, the house, the kids, and I can turn them against you. Her voice grew stronger as she put her hand on my shoulder. I looked at her in disgust and pulled away. Would you do that to someone you love? You cheated, threatened me, and think you can get away with it, I growled. I wouldn't want that. But Roger says in court I'll win. You don't have a choice. I'll work it out and come back to you. You're stronger than me. For the second time, I stood abruptly, hatred in my eyes. I looked at her, still feeling some love, but my anger took over. You selfish, unfaithful woman, I hissed. She stepped back. You dare to profess love, thinking I'll stay married to you after this? You think I have no choice? Well, screw you. I don't know who you are anymore. You're not the woman I married. The woman I loved would never use our children against me. Who are you? Cam, she stuttered. I let the anger pass, choosing a rational path to see if reasoning with her was possible. Louise, if you love me, stop this now. I don't know if we can save our marriage after what you told me. You were carnal with another man. If you call it off and we go to counseling, I promise to try to understand and forgive your betrayal. My betrayal? She whispered. Yes, counseling, I repeated. Our marriage is dying. Call it off and let's get counseling right away. I'll call Rose now and get her to help. Louise had mentioned Rose, my first love, who became a close friend along with her husband Toby. Rose, a therapist, could help us. No, Cam, I don't want Rose involved, she said defiantly. I understand how angry you are. You may think I don't, but I do. I tried to respond, but she interrupted. Let me finish. You may think I don't love you, but I do. Those threats were wrong, but they were true. I looked at her, wondering what had happened to the woman I married. I'll make you a deal. I know I hurt you, but I'm going with Roger this weekend. We can go to counseling after we're done. If it's important to you, we'll go then. What about the girls? I asked. What about them? She replied. How do we tell them we're breaking up? I asked indifferently. We're not breaking up, she said, sighing. Roger and I will go our separate ways eventually. The girls won't be affected. What about me? Well, you're with Roger. What about me? Where's the love for me? I asked. What do you mean? Louise hesitated. I'm affectionate, and you've pulled away. You haven't kissed me in 2 weeks. What am I supposed to do? I said. She looked at me as if she hadn't considered my needs. I don't know, she said, lowering her eyes. Roger says I should be his for now. I exploded with frustration, rage, and sadness. To hell with Roger. Denying me your husband because of him, is that fair? I shouted. I threw my glass at the wall, shattering it. I slumped into a chair, feeling broken. After a few minutes, a car horn sounded outside. I looked at Louise, seeing indecision for the first time. Just go away, I whispered. When I turned around, she was gone. I stayed in my seat for half an hour, devastated. My phone rang. It was my daughter, Carrie. She had forgotten her bag and was on her way home with Robbie. Sorry, Dad. Mom's phone went to voicemail, so I called you, she said. It's okay, sweetie. Your mom isn't home, but I'll have your bag ready, I replied, trying to sound normal. Daddy, she paused. Who's Roger? I'm sorry, I meant Robbie, I stammered, caught off guard. What's going on? She asked, concerned. I didn't answer. Carrie, I'm just having a bad day. First, I had problems at work, then your mom and I had a fight. I'm just emotional, I replied. I didn't want to lie, but I also didn't want to tell my 18-year-old daughter the whole story. Dad, stop skirting around the truth. What did Mom do? Her tone was accusatory. It doesn't matter, honey. I'll be fine. I'll get your bag ready. Don't let our problems ruin your weekend. Love you, Carrie. I hung up quickly, feeling guilty. I went inside, splashed water on my face, got Carrie's bag, and placed it by the garage door. I was cleaning up glass shards when Carrie came out. Are you okay, Daddy? She asked, concerned. Louise had looked at me that way before, but not tonight. Sure, honey. I put your bag in its usual place, I said flatly, sweeping the glass. Robbie stood in the doorway, frowning. Carrie sat across from me, taking my hands. Dad, you're not okay. Mom called me back after I talked to you. It sounded like someone else was with her. What's going on? She saw the brokenness in my eyes. That damn cow, she almost shouted. What's the matter, baby? Robbie asked. He looked at me. I felt old and depressed. My mother is cheating on my father, she said. No, really, Robbie said. Carrie and Robbie looked at me. I nodded slowly. She gave me an ultimatum and left with her lover before you called, I admitted, They stayed with me. Later, Rose and Toby showed up with Thai takeout, Kraken, and wine. I told them about Louise's betrayal. "Dad," Carrie asked, "doesn't Mom remember the prenup?" "When I started my printing business, my parents gave me capital, and their lawyers drew up a prenuptial agreement. If one spouse cheated, they'd only get clothes, and 15% of the marital property. The house, cars, and children would go to the other party. The business stayed out of any separation or divorce." I shook my head. "Mom said it wasn't cheating if she told me," I said. Carrie snorted. "Cheating is cheating, whether she told you or not. She's been emotionally cheating for months. Sarah and I noticed something was wrong." I nodded. "Oh my God, Sarah, I need to talk to her. Let her know everything will be okay." Carrie grabbed my hands. "Dad, please don't lie. It's not going to be okay. Mom eliminated something in you today, and I don't know if I can forgive her." "She's still your mom," I replied, my voice whiny. "Mother or not, there's no excuse for what she did," Carrie said sharply, then softened. "Sarah and I will be fine. I'll talk to her in the morning. She knew something was wrong, too." We ate, and despite my mood, I felt better after talking to Carrie, Robbie, Rose, and Toby. "Everyone, do you mind if I talk to Cameron for a bit?" Rose asked later when the conversation had shifted away from Louise. The others went inside. Rose sat across from me. "You have an amazing daughter, Cameron," she said, smiling. I nodded, looking at Rose. She was a beautiful, red-haired woman and my first love. We dated in high school until college separated us. She fell for Toby, and I met Louise and fell deeply in love with her. Rose and I remained close friends, never considering betraying our spouses. Our children's relationship strengthened our family bond. Carrie and Robbie knew Rose and I had dated, and we knew they were now sleeping together, but we didn't interfere because they cared for each other deeply. Carrie told us she gave Robbie her pureness as his 18th birthday present. Rose tapped my leg, bringing me back to the present. "How are you, Cam? Don't lie. I know you better than anyone." "I don't know, Rose. I knew things were hard, but this..." I gestured vaguely. "I still love her, but I hate what she did. I want to scream, cry, and hurt her and her boyfriend. But right now I still love her," I said, agonized. Rose nodded, now in therapist mode. "How will you handle it, Cam?" "Rose, cut the crap. It doesn't work on me. I know you too well." I smirked sadly. "I have to break up with her, maybe even divorce, honoring the prenup." I begged her to stay and suggested counseling, but she threatened to take everything and turn the girls against me. Rose nodded. "You're right. I can't be your counselor. I'm too close to both of you. Tomorrow we'll find someone for you to talk to. But Toby and I will support you through this. Robbie and Toby are probably trying to calm Carrie down. I haven't seen her this angry since Candy Taylor asked Robbie to the junior high dance." She laughed. I laughed quietly. "Thank you, Rose. I'm sorry you're in the middle of this." "Don't worry, Cam, we're here for you. If you had dumped Louise, we'd be supporting her the same way." "I would never," I said. Rose smiled. "I know. You and Toby are the most loyal people I know." Toby was short, stocky, muscular, with blonde hair and blue eyes. I had a mop of brown hair and was tall and trim. "I think that's why I fell in love with him. He reminded me of you," she said wistfully. We laughed, sharing a deep friendship. For the next hour, we discussed my feelings of sadness, betrayal, rage, and numbness. Rose understood. Later, we went inside and found Robbie and Carrie snuggled on the couch. Toby was watching a movie. "Hi, everyone," I greeted. Carrie hugged me. "Are you okay, Daddy?" I looked at Rose, who smiled. "No, honey, I'm not okay, but I'm glad you're all here." "Dad, Robbie and I are staying tonight. We don't want you to be alone." "But what about your weekend?" I asked. Robbie brushed it off. "Cameron, there's no place Carrie and I would rather be. We can reschedule the weekend. Carrie was right. You need us here." I didn't argue. That evening, Rose and Toby said goodbye, promising to bring breakfast. I said goodnight to Carrie and Robbie, then showered and read in bed to distract myself. "We'll bring you coffee in the morning, Daddy. I know I won't sleep well, and I can only guess how you'll do," she told me. I smiled sadly, thanked Carrie, gave her a hug, kissed her forehead, and went to my room. After a shower, I changed into my work clothes and sighed at the reminders of Louise everywhere. I threw her things on the floor, planning to box them up the next day. Lying in bed, I read on my iPad when my phone rang. It was Toby, not Louise, checking in on me. I thanked him with a thumbs-up emoji, and he replied they'd see me tomorrow. Just before putting my phone down, I opened the Find My Phone app and pinged Louise's phone. It was 2 hours away in the Blue Mountains. I took a screenshot for proof. Our Swan security system recorded everything, so I reviewed the footage. The camera caught Louise and me discussing her infidelity, and another camera showed a man getting out of a BMW, kissing Louise and driving off with her. I had video proof of her leaving to be with Roger Fellworth and her phone's location. I pulled out my laptop, logged into Swan Security, and exported the videos. While drafting an email to my lawyer about starting the divorce process, Louise called. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was chilling. Cameron, Roger, and I heard my phone beep. Don't do anything stupid. We'll be done eventually, and then we can talk. If you don't follow my instructions, Roger will destroy you, and I'll take everything. Trust me, it's not forever. But if you blab, I'll take you apart until you lose everything. When Louise and I are done, she'll come back to you. Play ball, and everything will be fine. I heard them both laugh. I was stunned but determined. I redrafted the email demanding Louise be served with divorce papers at work and suing Roger Fellworth. Although Australia doesn't have an alienation of affection law, I wanted my lawyer to find something to hurt them. I also wanted to sue for loss of income due to the affair's impact on my business. I hit submit but realized I didn't have Roger's wife's information. If I did, I'd tell her about Roger's cheating. I didn't sleep well, tossing and turning all night. I heard Carrie and Robbie get up early. Robbie went to get coffee, and I dressed and headed to the kitchen. Carrie hugged me tightly and asked if I had slept. I shook my head. Me neither, she replied. I tried, but I just couldn't. I don't understand how Mom could do this to us, not just you. We talked about her university studies, avoiding the topic until Robbie returned with 3 large coffees. I sipped mine, enjoying the cappuccino and its chocolate topping. Carrie and I sighed in unison. Robbie laughed. You're both the same. He turned serious. So you haven't slept either, have you? No, I was busy texting the lawyer, and then I got a voicemail from Louise. After pinging her phone, I explained I was starting divorce proceedings. I played the voicemail Louise and Roger left me, and Carrie tried to hold back tears. That woman is not my mother, she said quietly, wiping her eyes. My mother would never insult my father or let another man humiliate him. Robbie and I agreed. Around 10 a.m., we wondered where Rose and Toby were. They'd promised breakfast around 9. An hour later, Robbie tried calling them but couldn't reach them. I called Josie at the cafe where they usually went, and she confirmed they'd picked up breakfast at 8:30. Intense anxiety hit me. I was about to go look for them when Robbie's phone rang. He answered and then collapsed, pale. I took the phone. This is Cameron Other. Who am I speaking to? I asked. Mr. Other, this is Police Constable Colin Sharp. I have sad news. Robbie's parents were in a major accident. I inhaled sharply, seeing Robbie almost comatose on the ground, Carrie holding him desperately. Are Rose and Toby all right, Constable? I asked. Mr. Other, can Robbie give consent for you to speak on his behalf? Robbie managed to say yes. The officer continued. At 8:45 this morning, their car collided with an out-of-control semi-trailer. The car was destroyed. Mrs. Gettings is in surgery, but Mr. Gettings did not survive. I turned pale and sank to the ground. Toby was dead, and Rose was in surgery. I cleared my throat. Which hospital? Carrie, panicked, started asking about the hospital. I swallowed hard, trying to stay calm. They are at the Royal North Shore Hospital. Will you and Robbie be there soon? She asked, her voice sad. Yes, I mumbled, getting detailed directions. 5 minutes later, we were out the door. Within half an hour, we were at the trauma unit. The nurses tried to reassure us. We asked about Rose's condition, Toby's body, and the other driver. Constable Sharp arrived and introduced herself. Robbie allowed me to represent him, and she explained the crash details. The semi-trailer had crashed into their car, eliminating Toby instantly and critically injuring Rose. Rose had a skull fracture, multiple lacerations, 2 broken legs, and lost her left arm. The surgical team was working to save her. She had severe blood loss, but her arm's position during the crash helped prevent her from bleeding out. The day passed with phone calls and conversations. Robbie stayed with me, helping call family. Carrie called Sarah, who arrived an hour later, hugging Robbie and crying with Carrie. After a while, she looked up at us. Where's Mom? Sarah asked innocently. Carrie and I exchanged a look. She's not coming, Carrie said bitterly. Sarah looked at us, her expression grim. Is this because of Roger? Sarah, do you know something about your mom and Roger? I asked quietly. Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. A couple of weeks ago, I saw Mom with new underwear. When I asked if it was for you, Dad, she eventually admitted it was for a date with Roger. Why didn't you say anything? Carrie asked, her tone accusatory. I didn't know what to do. I avoided home because I didn't want to face either of you. Sorry, Dad, Sarah said, looking at me. I hugged her. It's okay, baby girl. I just found out last night. She started to cry. I'm so sorry, Daddy. Maybe if I'd said something, Aunt Rose and Uncle Toby wouldn't have... She broke down, and we left only to shower and change. I brought Carrie and Sarah home to clean up. Then Carrie drove back to the hospital with Sarah, and I followed. Around 4 a.m. Sunday, Rose was brought in from surgery. She was bruised and in critical condition, but alive. She would stay in the ICU for a few days to ensure no brain damage. Despite his grief, Robbie was gracious to the doctors and asked to meet the surgeons who saved his mother's life. I was proud of him and hoped he would be my son-in-law someday. We spent the day at the hospital. I brought my laptop and phone chargers, confirming that the divorce papers were ready for delivery to Louise, Roger, and their workplace on Monday. I had a great lawyer, better than Roger, I bet. I also contacted my managers to handle work for the weekend due to our family tragedy. One positive note was that one of my team members fixed the broken car from Friday. In the afternoon, we started planning Toby's funeral with Robbie. He contacted their family lawyer for instructions. Edwina, Rose's mom, joined us later. She hugged her grandson and me, treating me like a son. Edwina informed us that Toby's mom, Camille, would visit at the end of the week. We talked easily in the hospital waiting room, reminiscing and planning. When I asked the nurse if we needed to move, she said we could stay as long as it wasn't crowded, understanding our need to be near Rose. Time flew by as we talked. Louise was only mentioned in passing. Around 8 p.m. Sunday, I answered my ringing phone without looking. Hey, this is Cameron Other, I said, watching Robbie hug Carrie. That's no way to greet your wife, Louise scolded. I told you not to make waves or you'll regret it. Roger will take you out if you say anything. Where are you, Cameron? You're supposed to be home. I didn't know what had happened to Louise over the weekend, but the woman on the phone was completely different from the one I'd seen Friday night. Louise, I said with contempt, silencing the room. It's me. Where are you and the girls? If you tell them anything, I'll turn them against you, so you better go home or you'll be sorry. I hung up mid-sentence, uninterested in threats. Tomorrow, Louise would see her carefully constructed narrative unravel. The strumpet just got home, I said, shrugging. We heard her, Dad, Sarah said quietly. I don't know why you even answered. I had spent hours talking with Sarah, who apologized repeatedly for not saying anything earlier. She was nearly as angry as Carrie. Daddy, in the divorce, I'm going to live with you, okay? Sarah had said. Of course, baby, I replied, hugging her. Returning to the present, I explained. I answered without thinking. It just took a moment to realize who it was. My phone rang again. Louise kept calling, then tried the girls. After a while, Carrie had enough. What? She shouted into the receiver. Louise reprimanded her for her tone. Mom, stop it. I don't want to talk to a lying, cheating cow. We're in mourning and we don't need you interfering. Louise shouted curses I never thought she knew. She assumed Carrie was upset about our marriage, not Toby's pass away and Rose's condition. Carrie interrupted her. Mom, I won't put up with your yelling. Dad told us everything. I have no interest in living with you. You've lost the respect of both your daughters. She paused, then added, Sarah told us what she knew. Pack your bags, because none of us want you around. Another pause. No, I won't tell you where we are. Call Roger. Oh, you can't because he's with his wife, who doesn't know he's a cheating fool. Sorry, Mom. She hung up. Carrie looked at us and said, Wrong number. Despite everything, we all laughed, even the nurses. Edwina went home for the night, promising to return early. Sarah and I were about to leave for a few hours. Carrie and Robbie would stay until midnight, then switch with us. As we packed, a trauma nurse approached us. She's awake, she said excitedly. We all smiled nervously and asked about Rose's condition. She's with a doctor now. She's out of it, but you can see her for a little while. We took turns visiting Rose, who was covered in medical gear and bandages, her left forearm sheathed. Hi, Petal, I said, using my nickname for her. You gave us quite a scare, but I'm glad you're on the mend. She couldn't speak due to a breathing tube and was under strong medication. Her eyes held a question I didn't want to answer. I shook my head and she understood. A single tear rolled down her cheek. I couldn't touch her, so I just sat and talked quietly about how proud I was and that we would get through this together. When I left, a nurse handed me a tissue. I had been crying without realizing it. I thanked her and walked back down the hall. A half hour later, Sarah and I hugged Carrie and Robbie and headed home, exhausted. We managed to sleep for about 3 hours before returning to the hospital to give Carrie and Robbie a break. With Rose awake, we felt somewhat relieved. As we drove, we talked about how glad we were that Rose was okay, but frowned when we saw a strange BMW X5 in our driveway. Damn, we muttered simultaneously. I saw the front lights on and made a U-turn, parking by the curb. We saw the curtains move, but no one opened the door. Should we go in or leave? Sarah asked. We should go in. Sorry, sweetie, but I need a break and caffeine. You'll go to your room and try to ignore what will be an unpleasant conversation. Are you sure I can stay with you, Dad? Sarah asked, showing her willingness to confront her mother despite hating confrontation. I pulled out my phone and hit record. Sarah did the same. We got out of the car and walked to the door. It was unlocked, and as we stepped inside, Roger Fellworth confronted us. Ah, the little betrayed man, back to apologize? You better play ball before I ruin your life, he sneered. Sarah walked in, causing Roger to flinch. Louise hesitated. I'm too tired for this. I'm going to bed. I'll make sure we're up by 11:30 to go back, Sarah said, brushing past Roger and Louise, muttering idiot and strumpet. Once her door closed, they turned on me. Louise told you not to say anything, you fool! Roger lunged at me. I held up my phone. I'm recording this conversation and will continue until you leave, I said. Louise turned pale. Roger also paled, but shrugged. Whatever betrayed man, he smirked. Roger was taller and broader than me, but most of his bulk was fat. He was balding and in his late 40s or early 50s. I couldn't understand why Louise would want him. Ignoring Roger, I addressed Louise. Louise, I asked you not to be here when I got home, and you insult me more by bringing your lover. Cameron, she began, but Roger interrupted, stepping forward. Listen, you fool. We told you not to say anything. Now I'm going to make your life hell. Mr. Fellworth, you are not welcome here. Watch your language. My daughter is in the other room. So, he yelled, she won't tell anyone, and neither will you. He grabbed my phone, threw it to the floor, and stomped on it, then started yelling. You're just a provincial printer whose wife is sick of him. Louise joined in. Cameron, it's true. Roger is better than you. Now that you told the girls, it's going to be hard on you. We will destroy you. Louise, what are you... Roger punched me before I could finish. I fell, moving with the blow, but it still hurt. You punched me in my house, I said, rubbing the spot. So what? Louise will support whatever I do. I could destroy you right now, and she'd tell the cops you attacked me. I'm a lawyer. You may think you're important in the print world, but I make the greens that make this world go round? He laughed. I take what I want from who I want, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. I looked at Louise from the ground. Louise, is that true? You're going to support this idiot? I said, getting to my feet. Roger took a defensive stance, but relaxed when he saw me focus on Louise. She looked tense, but defiant. I'm sorry, Cameron, but yes, I will support Roger even if he destroys you. You're just not a man like him. I sighed. Well then, you both need to leave, or I'll unleash hell on you that will make everyone you know ridicule you. Roger, emboldened, lunged at me again. I quickly dodged, tripping him and causing him to smash into the coffee table. He got up, ready to pounce again, but I sidestepped him and he collapsed in a daze. I grabbed his ear and whispered, looking at Louise with burning hatred. Listen, you fool. You stole my wife, invaded my home, and now you're lying on the floor. You're about to be arrested. I'm going to ruin your life. I let him go and he fell to the ground. What did you do? Yelled Louise, rushing to Roger. Cameron, what did you do to Roger? I shrugged. Never mind, Louise. You both attacked me without even asking how Sarah or I were doing. You just followed his agenda. She glared at me, leaning over Roger. After a pause, I continued. Our daughter and her boyfriend came to support me because they knew something was wrong. Rose and Toby were on their way here with breakfast when they were hit by an out-of-control car. Toby died and Rose is in critical condition. If you had bothered to watch the news or ask, you would know that because of you, one friend is dead and another may not survive. I let that sink in. Louise had the nerve to growl at me. It's not my fault, Cameron. We told you not to say anything. It's your fault they're dead, not mine. No, it's your fault, Mom, Sarah said, standing in the doorway. The police and ambulance are on their way. She looked at Louise. I don't know who you are, but you're not my mother. If you hadn't cheated, this never would have happened. She looked at her hands. And it's partly my fault. Maybe if I'd said something to Daddy, he could have stopped it. Sarah, I started to say. No, Daddy. I should have said something, but the blame is on her, she said, pointing at Louise. She retreated to her room as we heard sirens approaching. 2 police cars arrived and chaos ensued. Louise tried to claim I had attacked Roger, but when asked if he was her husband, she stammered, admitting he wasn't, and that I had punched him. I told my side of the story. An ambulance arrived, and a very sick Roger was carried out on a stretcher. The police were close to arresting me because I was the one who had attacked someone. Louise kept insisting it was my fault. Then Sarah came back into the room and said, "I'm sorry, officer, but I have a recording that confirms everything my dad said. It includes threats from this man and my mom saying she would lie to protect him." She handed a USB drive to the officer. "What, like Roger smashed your phone?" asked Louise, not realizing the police were still listening. "Mom, Dad had a feeling something might happen, so I recorded everything from my room." She looked at the officer. "I don't feel safe around my mom. Can you please not make me stay with her? She said she'd support this man no matter what he did to Dad. I heard him punch Dad, and I'm scared." Sarah hugged me, and with her testimony and evidence, my wife was arrested and taken to the station for the night. Louise looked at me but said nothing as she was taken away. We didn't have time to sleep, so we showered, changed, and had coffee before heading back to the hospital. In Rose's room, Carrie and Robbie were leaning on each other. When Carrie saw my face, she gasped. "Daddy, what happened?" she asked, noticing the bruise from where I was injured. We explained Louise and Roger's visit, and I mentioned punching Roger. Rose, waking up, looked at me sadly. "Rose," I stammered. "I'm sorry, Petal. If I had known you were awake..." I realized I should have been more delicate. I saw her right hand moving slightly, and I gently held it. "Are you okay, Rose? Can I get you anything? Do you need a nurse?" I asked. She blinked twice, then 3 times slowly, but gripped my arm. I stayed by her side all night. The next few weeks flew by. Louise's parents bailed her out the next day and called me names until Carrie set them straight. Louise received divorce papers at work and was suspended on unpaid leave. She moved into her parents' spare room. She returned to pack her things while Carrie and Robbie watched. Carrie made it clear her mother would never be welcome again, blaming her for the accident. It took a week before they removed Rose's breathing tube. Her first hoarse words were for me. "Cameron, are you okay?" I was shocked. "Rose, how can you ask that?" She smiled sadly. "I'm fine, sweetheart. I knew about Toby before you told me. We professed our love, but he knew he wouldn't make it." She cried. "After I woke up, I saw your eyes confirming he was gone." I sat by her, holding her right hand, still intact unlike her missing left. She whispered, "I had a dream last night. Toby came to me looking beautiful and unharmed. He told me he was fine and it was his time. The accident wasn't anyone's fault, not even Louise's." Her smile faltered a bit. "I know, just like Toby. No one to blame. He told me he loved me, but now it's my job to take care of you, Cameron. He loved you like a brother and was upset about what happened to you." I replied, "Rose, you're the one who needs care. Haven't you noticed you're missing an arm?" She laughed, lifting her stump. "I'm armless now, aren't I?" I snorted. "I guess it's my job now to help you when you need it," she laughed. "I'm serious, Cam. I miss Toby, but I feel at peace. He made me promise to take care of you." I smiled. "Okay, you win. You can take care of me." Rose looked smug. "But only after you leave here. Until then, I have to look after you." The next few months passed slowly. If I wasn't at work, I was at the hospital with Rose or packing up at home. We decided to sell the house and move to a smaller place in North Sydney, near transportation and the medical center. It had 3 bedrooms, an office, and a distant view of Sydney Harbor from the master bedroom. The divorce from Louise was in full swing. The girls refused to have anything to do with her. Sarah, once malleable, was now tough as nails. Carrie practically moved in with Robbie. Louise, living in her parents' spare room, tried to reconcile, but after hearing the recording from Sarah's phone, her parents stopped trying to mend things. Roger's life fell apart too. He lost a testicle, was fired, and faced my lawsuit. His wife, Miranda, who controlled most of their finances, discovered his infidelity and cut him off. Roger was now living in a cheap hotel, unable to find a job. Rose improved daily. A month after the accident, she left the hospital with a nurse to say goodbye to Toby. Despite her injuries, she smiled, laughed, and comforted others. Her legs were in casts, her head and left forearm bandaged, and a scar stretched across her face. Doctors suggested it might be corrected with plastic surgery later. At the funeral, I pushed Rose's wheelchair. Her caregiver stayed close, but let me assist her. A month later, I was in Rose's hospital room doing paperwork when I felt her eyes on me. "What's the matter, Petal? Do you need something?" I asked, turning to face her. Tears streamed down her face. "Cameron, she tried to say. I immediately went to her side, wrapping my arms around her. She cried in my arms. The psychiatrist had warned this could happen. From the moment she woke up, she had worried about others, not herself. "Shh, Rose, it's going to be okay. I'm here for you. You'll never be alone," I said, comforting her. She cried harder, nodding, holding on to me with her good arm. "I know, Cameron. I just miss him so much," she said, looking at me pleadingly. "I miss him too, Rose. Toby was my best friend. I don't know what I would have done without you and Toby when Louise did what she did," I said, and she hugged me tighter. "Will it get better?" she asked, vulnerable. "I don't know," I replied quietly. "I hope so. Toby's gone, but you're here and we have our kids. That has to count for something." She was silent for a moment, then relaxed. "Thank you, Cam. I don't know if I could have made it without you. You're getting wiser in your old age," she giggled nervously. I stroked her hair and kissed her head. "You're welcome, Rose. Without Toby and Louise, I need a best friend. Are you interested in the job?" I asked, holding her. Rose did the unexpected. She kissed me. I kissed her back, feeling a spark of romantic love, then pulled away. "Rose, I'm sorry. You're my best friend. And I love you, but we're still mourning Toby." She sighed, snuggling closer. "I know, Cam, but I still feel something from high school." That night, I had a restless sleep and a vivid dream. In the dream, I was in a large bar with people out of focus. I greeted them, but everything was blurry. Then I saw someone familiar sitting alone. As I approached, he stood up. "Toby!" I exclaimed, and rushed to hug him. He laughed. "Glad to see you, Cam. You can hug me." We hugged, and he looked as he did before the accident. We sat down with drinks, a Kraken and cola for me, a Guinness for him. "Good stuff," he said. "So how are you, Cam?" I deflated, the dream feeling real. "Not great, buddy. Divorcing Louise is tough. The girls are angry and supporting Rose is hard. I feel like I'm drowning." Toby nodded. "What about you and Rose?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. I thought for a moment. "What about us?" "Cam, we've been friends forever. I know you love each other." I snorted. "Of course, Toby. She's my closest friend now." "I want her to get better," he sighed. "But what about the kiss? You can't say it meant nothing." I looked at him. "I know it was more than nothing, Toby. I love her. Always have." He smiled. "I get it, buddy. Rose was married to you, and Louise was married to me. But I'm dead. You can't cheat on me. Rose needs someone to love and protect her, and you love her." He looked at me, and it felt like the real Toby was weighing something important. "Rose loves you too, Cameron. She's hurt by my pass away, but desperately hopes you won't leave her. She holds the same love for you as she did for me, maybe even more because you've known her longer." I didn't know what to say. "You know," Toby leaned in like revealing a secret. "If Rose and I hadn't met when you were apart, she was going to hunt you down and marry you." "What?" I said, nearly choking on my drink. "How do you know that?" "She told me," he smiled. "How could she tell you? You're just a dream, a figment of my imagination. Rose never mentioned it to me." Toby laughed. "Cam, look around. This isn't just a dream, and I'm not just a figment of your mind." "Crap," I replied. "It's true. I'll prove it to you." "How?" I asked skeptically. "3 ways," he said humorously. "First," he raised one finger, "ask Rose what my last words to her were." "I already know. You told each other you loved each other in the car." Toby shook his head. "That's partly true. But my last words were, 'Love Cameron all your days.'" I started to reply, but Toby raised 2 fingers. "Secondly, Louise will show up at the hospital tomorrow. It won't be pretty." "Toby, this isn't the way." "Third," he interrupted, raising 3 fingers, "my mom will bring you and Rose awesome chicken salad sandwiches from the Asian shop in North Harbor. She'll be wearing yellow sandals." I looked at him. "Toby, how can you know it's a dream and you're dead?" I asked. He touched his nose. "It's a miracle I could meet you and Rose at all. But I was asked to, and I'm happy to spend more time with you." I didn't believe him, but was happy to see him. "So what am I supposed to do? Marry her?" Toby laughed. "That's up to you. But if you marry Rose, you have my blessing." He raised his glass. "Love her fiercely, Cameron, and I'll be proud no matter what you choose." For the next hour, Toby and I played darts, drank, and sang bar songs. Other customers joined us, though I can't remember them clearly. My last memory was Toby hugging me and thanking me for being his friend. As we said goodbye, I woke up with tears running down my face. I was sad, but happy to have said goodbye. By the time I shaved and dressed, I had almost forgotten the dream. I stopped by the office, checked in with my managers, and handled paperwork before heading to the hospital. It was around lunchtime when I arrived, and Rose smiled as I entered the room. The doctors reported that she had a long way to go but could go home in a few weeks. She had been complaining about her hospital bed, so I was happy for her. We were discussing her sleeping in her own bed when Toby's mom, Camille, walked in. I didn't know Camille as well as Rose's mom, Edwina, but we were casual friends. She smiled as she entered the room.
"Rose," Camille said warmly, "you look so much better today. And Cameron looks so handsome. You're doing a great job taking care of Rose. Toby would be proud," she added, leaning in to kiss Rose. At that moment, I noticed her yellow sandals and froze. Rose saw my reaction. "Cam, what's wrong?" both Rose and Camille asked, noticing my stare. "Is something wrong with my shoes?" "I just bought them yesterday," Camille said, frowning. "No, sorry, Camille," I replied. "Your shoes just reminded me of a dream I had," I said, trying to brush it off. Rose gave me a look that said we'd discuss it later. "Oh, before I forget, I picked up your lunches from an amazing Asian sandwich shop in North Harbor. They have the best chicken sandwiches," Camille said excitedly. As she mentioned chicken sandwiches, I mumbled the words along with her. "Cam, are you okay?" Rose asked, concerned. I looked at both of them and tried to convince myself it was just a coincidence. We ate the sandwiches, and Camille was right. They were delicious. After lunch, we chatted about the weather and plans to get Rose home. I was starting to relax when Louise walked in. Louise, dressed in jeans and a blouse with her hair in a bun, carried flowers and a wrapped gift. "Oh, Rose, it's so good to see you. You look great," she said, then noticed me. Her demeanor changed. "Cameron, what are you doing here? It's your fault Rose is here and Toby is dead. Once I divorce you, I'll make sure Rose never has to see you again." I stood up. "Get out," Rose said weakly, turning away from everyone. "Rose, I'll get Cameron out," Louise said. "No, he's staying, and you're leaving," Rose said, crying. I stepped toward Louise. "You need to leave, now." Louise threw the gift on the floor, and the flowers against the wall. I moved between her and Rose. "What did you say to her, Cameron?" "She knows it's your fault Toby died. I'll take care of Rose. She needs me." "No, she doesn't. Rose lost her husband. I lost my best friend. We've been here every day. Where have you been?" I started to rant. "Cameron," Rose's voice cut through. I turned to face her and my anger melted away. "I'm sorry," I mumbled. "It's okay," Rose replied. She looked at Louise. "You need to leave. Your behavior shows you're not my friend. Don't use Toby's pass away to blame Cameron. I'm ashamed I ever called you my friend. You are not welcome here." "Should I call security?" Rose asked Louise. Louise started to object, but Rose raised her stump. "Leave, Louise. You can't stay with me anymore. We're no longer friends." "Louise," Rose pleaded, "this isn't fair." "No one is fair, Louise," Rose interrupted, her anger rising. "What's not fair is that my husband is dead, and I'm crippled for life because you chose to sleep with your husband, who was one of my closest friends." The room fell silent except for the sounds from the hallway. Louise shifted her gaze between Rose and me, her face showing a range of emotions before settling on anger. "Well, screw you, Rose. I can see how it goes, you hypocritical beaver," she snarled. "You can shove whatever help I was going to give you." I grabbed Louise under the arm and dragged her from the room. As we went down the hallway, she hissed and swore. I knew the guards would show up soon. I turned to her. "I don't know what happened to you, but it stops now. You've destroyed every relationship around you, from your daughters to your friends to me." The doors opened and 2 security guards stepped out. "Are you all right, sir?" one asked. I waved him off. "Fine, Peter. Louise was just leaving." The guard wasn't fooled, but let it go. Louise looked at me, then at the guards, and shrugged. "Sure, I'll see you later, Cameron," she said. "I hope not," I replied. The guards escorted me back to Rose's room, where Camille and Rose were whispering. After ensuring Rose was okay, the guards left, and the cleaners tidied up the mess. Camille hugged me tightly. "Thanks, Cameron. Look after her. She needs you," Camille whispered before leaving. "Are you okay?" I asked Rose, sitting down on her bed and squeezing her hand. "Isn't that what I should be asking you?" she replied, snorting. I shrugged. "It's been a weird day, but I felt calmer after dealing with Louise. It started with that dream last night." Rose raised her head. "The dream?" I nodded. "Yeah, I couldn't sleep, so I tossed and turned, and then I dreamt about Toby in a pub." Rose nodded. "It was a big pub, and everyone was out of focus except for Toby." "Yeah, exactly. Toby told me what would happen today. Camille's shoes, the sandwiches, Louise showing up. He said it all would happen." Rose looked at me, her eyes full of belief. "There was another one, wasn't there?" she asked. I nodded. "Toby's last words to me were,
Love Cameron all your days, Rose said, tears streaming down her face.
How did you know? I whispered. Toby met me in the pub, too. He told me I needed to let you go and love you. He said you wouldn't be able to ask the question when the time came, but I had to tell you our last words. We fell into each other's arms, crying and sharing our grief. As evening came, we continued to hold each other, both of us tired. Finally, as we fell asleep, I kissed the top of her head and whispered, I love you, Petal. I love you too, Cam, Rose replied. After that day, things gradually improved. The next morning, Sarah, Carrie, and Robbie found us huddled together under a hospital blanket. Sarah clapped her hands when we woke up, and they all smiled at us. I kissed Rose gently, got up, and stretched. Carrie kissed Robbie, and we explained most of the previous day to them, omitting some details. We agreed that Rose would move in with Sarah and me after her discharge, given our new apartment was closer to the hospital. Carrie and Robbie would stay in Rose's old apartment and rent out the other rooms to university students with our consent. By the time Rose was discharged, she was using removable cloth casts instead of formal ones. Her left forearm stump was healing well, and although she was sad, she had mostly accepted her disability. Her skull fracture had healed, leaving only a mild concussion that was treated at the hospital. Rose's homecoming was joyous. The doctors encouraged her to resume a fulfilling relationship with caution. The kids had moved many of Rose's belongings into the new house, and even placed them in the master bedroom, which I didn't mind. After dinner on her first night home, Carrie and Robbie left for Rose's old place, and Sarah went to a friend's house, leaving Rose and me alone. A few weeks later, my divorce from Louise was finalized. Thanks to the prenuptial agreement, she got very little and didn't touch my business. I gave her a check for $40,000, more than required, hoping it would help her start anew elsewhere, possibly in Wollongong, so we wouldn't have to see her again. Roger ended up in trouble. Unable to find a job, he started selling pills and got caught by an undercover cop. He's now serving 2 years in prison. 6 months later, Rose and I got married. She was beautiful in her wedding dress, though self-conscious about her appearance. With our support, her bouts of depression were short-lived. Rose changed careers, earning a degree in psychology and counseling those who had lost limbs. 2 years later, she was honored on Australia Day for her contributions to helping the disabled. In her speech, she credited her family and especially me for her success, as I had supported her through her recovery. We did several media interviews about the challenges faced by people with physical disabilities. Our love grew every day. Though we had disagreements, we always forgave each other and never went to bed angry. We didn't see Louise for about 3 years until Carrie and Robbie's wedding. Carrie and Robbie had graduated with honors, secured good jobs, and wanted to start a family. Though Carrie didn't want to invite her mother, I persuaded her, believing Louise deserved to celebrate her daughter's wedding. Carrie agreed, but seated Louise with the regular guests instead of the family. Louise ended up with her elderly parents, who kept the peace by sitting a couple of tables away. At the wedding, I found myself at the bar with a Kraken and cola. It wasn't on the menu, but since I was paying, I figured I could have what I wanted. When Louise came up to me at the bar and ordered a glass of white wine, she turned to me. "I've never asked for forgiveness, have I?" she said, more a statement than a question. "No," I replied, looking at the crowd. Rose, Sarah, and Carrie were laughing at the other end of the room. I smiled. "I never expected you to," I added. Louise sighed. "You're right. I was a complete mess." "Uh-huh," I said, taking a sip of my drink. Rose saw me with Louise, frowned, but then nodded when I shook my head, indicating it was no big deal. "I saw you at the Australia Day Awards and have followed your accomplishments since," Louise said sadly, watching my wife and our daughters. "They all hate me, don't they?" she asked, looking at her wine glass. "Hate is a strong word," I reflected, then grinned. "No, it's the right word. But over time, the fire subsides. Maybe in a dozen years, the girls might call you." I sensed her shoulders slump. She turned to me. "What about you, Cameron? Do you hate me?" she asked. "Hate, loathe, despise, take your pick," I replied, hearing the band tuning up. I smiled, thinking about dancing with my daughter. "But you convinced Carrie to invite you tonight. Why?" she asked. I looked at her for the first time all evening. She looked hollow with hunted eyes and graying hair. This woman I once loved was broken. No mother should miss her daughter's wedding, even if she's disgraced. "I didn't invite you to make you feel better, but to ensure our daughter married with a clear conscience," I said. "And if I never see you again, I'll be happy." With that,
I walked away to join my family for the wedding dance. I heard her sobbing, but felt no sympathy. The rest of the evening was filled with dancing, eating, and laughter, and I never saw Louise again. Years later, we learned from her parents that Louise had died. It was right after Sarah got engaged to a doctor. At Sarah's engagement party, we found out Louise had an inflamed ovarian cyst and passed away in a hospital with only her parents by her side. She didn't want anyone to tell us. It was very sad. As for Rose and me, we kept each other close. When we had grandchildren, we spoiled them together. We traveled the world, saw many wonders, and enjoyed our family. Our love never dimmed. When I looked at Rose, I saw the girl I fell in love with at 18, the woman I married at 40, and the mischievous smile of a grandmother approaching 82. I knew I was lucky. I knew in my heart I would be loved until the day I died.